panel is all about diversity targeting and is ad tech up to inclusivity. And obviously this past year, we've been seeing brands now more than ever, really trying to target more diverse audiences and support publishers who serve communities of color. But it's not always easy, both financially and strategically. And that's what this panel is going to be all about. We have Andrew Kim, who's the Director of Media and Analytics at Walker and Company Brands, and Freddie Liversidge. He's the Global Director of Digital Activation at HP. They're going to discuss what they've been doing, what's been working, and what their challenges they're facing. So, hey, Andrew and Freddie, how are you?
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Lisa, Freddie.
Good morning to me, but good afternoon.
Hey, good morning. Yeah, we're on the East Coast. Yeah, sorry about that.
People. So I'm glad you guys are here. So before we get even started, where are you guys each coming from?
Yeah, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And
I'm in San Diego right now, but normally in the Bay Area.
Oh, okay, great. So you are on West Coast, your morning time too.
Yep, just waking up.
Yes, I was gonna say, so looking a little tired. No, I'm the one looking tired. Anyway, let's just get started because obviously this is so important, as I mentioned. It's something that, I mean, it's always been important, but I think really now it's taking front stage. And I just want to know in terms of how are you? And again, let's actually talk with Andrew because your background and tell everyone, you know, what you guys are. But tell me how you're targeting these diverse audiences.
Yeah, so here at Walker and Company Brands, just so if people aren't familiar, we're a health and grooming products company made specifically for our Black consumers, right? And so that is our core audience, and that's who we serve, and that's the community that we serve, and that's the community that we try to push forward and make sure that we are doing the best we can from the products that we make, the organizations that we support, and our consumers, right? And so we need to make sure that we are authentically communicating and connecting with our consumers in those spaces and places and spaces where our consumers are, right? And so I think from a targeting standpoint, we need to make sure, targeting and investment standpoint, we want to make sure that the data leakage that we have is minimized, right? And from what we've seen, right, and all of the discussion around data privacy, all great discussions, right? But again, right, with IDFA and all the, you know, the previous discussion with, you know, trying to triangulate just your audience in and of itself, whether it be cross-device or identifiers or anything like that, you know, that's a challenge, right? And then a second layer above that is when we're dealing with culture, when we're dealing with our Black consumers, whether a different multicultural organizations are dealing with other kind of a cultural type of targeting, right? I think therein lies another second layer of challenge that we've had to try and I wouldn't say deal with, but try and triangulate, figure out, right, and try and test into. And this hasn't been something that is brand new, but with the advent of just kind of iOS 14.5, and just all of the walled gardens and everything like that, it adds another layer of complexity that we've had to deal with, right? And so we've had to do a lot of testing, whether or not these audiences we're speaking to our audiences correctly, whether or not, whether from a creative standpoint, and then, you know, from an investment standpoint, are these audiences right? Are we connecting with our audiences in places where we can't necessarily measure? And so, you know, all the brand lift studies and everything like that, they aren't necessarily built around targeting AA individuals, right? And so with good reason, right? I think there are some nefarious actors out there that would utilize this type of data in nefarious ways, right? And so we want to try and balance that. And so that is the challenge that we're up against. And so, you know, we've tried, some of the DSPs have a way of targeting that way. And then some of the other things that we're trying is obviously some of the contextual targeting. So a lot of the passion points that our consumer has, whether it be music, fashion, or gaming, or sports, or anything like that, right? There is going to be some level of data leakage. So we need to be able to target them in an authentic way and get our message out there.
And now for you, Freddie, I know that this is a little bit newer for what you guys are doing. Talk about what you've been doing at this point.
Yeah, no, so yeah, definitely newer for HP. Not obviously that targeting diverse audiences, it wasn't a shock bomb last year, but with the movements of Black Lives Matter, we had a new CEO come in at HP, which really wanted to set us change the direction a little bit of the company and really make sure we're kind of supporting those minority owned inventory, but also making sure we're reaching and talking to minority cultures and so forth. And so we've been working to try and build out two kind of groups, which is around how do we target and make sure, as what Andrew was just kind of speaking about, target the Black community or the Latino community and so forth, but also how do we support the publishers that support those communities as well. And so that's where we've been spending a lot of our time thinking and focusing over the last 12 months, but really picking up some steam recently in the last 3 to 6 months.
And talking about that in publishers and actually coming off of what we, the last panel, contextually, finding these publishers, leveraging these endemic publishers, how are you sort of working with them and partnering with them? And we'll start again with you, Andrew, but first let's talk about what the benefits are, what you're finding that's working well.
Yeah, so I think from our standpoint, it's really the working well is probably from an influencer, from an audio standpoint, and making sure influencer and maybe some in the podcast space is only because we feel like those endemic sites that are targeting specifically and reach out and are connecting specifically with our Black consumers. And those connections that we have with our Black consumers in those spaces, we feel like are working really, really well for us, right? The scale is the issue, right? And so in balancing the scale and authenticity, I think that's just kind of the balance that marketers in general have to face. But when we're talking about specific cultural pockets and then specific interests and targeting, and then layering in a target on top of that, I think that's where it gets kind of a little bit, that's where the challenge comes in. So we've seen success, right? We've seen success with our publishing partners, whether it be OWN, whether it be Essence, whether it be BET, right? With those publishing partners, it's just how do we get those to scale, and how do we scale that out a lot further than they are currently? So I think, contextually, I think that makes a lot of sense. And so those are areas that we're willing to test into.
Well, and just to go back to you again, in terms of when you partnered with OWN, it's not just them. You also leverage what their social, I mean, how do you make it more valuable to your strategy, to what you're doing when you're working with publishers like this?
Right. And so I think a part of that own execution, what also was, there's a Twitter component as well to that. We know our consumers are active and talk and chat amongst themselves on Twitter, right? And so when there are shows or programs that are, that we know our consumers are watching and are aligned to, we make sure that we enter those conversations, we enter those places and spaces and engage in those conversations that really, one, we can authentically communicate and connect with our consumers, utilizing the influence and scale of a brand like OWN and the shows that our consumers are watching. But again, I think that's where we've seen success. So it's not just on the OWN publishing platform where we have a pre-roll video. It is leveraging the conversations and the activity that's going on surrounding the programs and the places and spaces where our consumers are.
Right. And Freddie, for you, what are you guys doing at HP?
So we're doing a few different things. We're trying to I'm going to probably end up back at the comment that Andrew made with the challenge with regards to scale, because that's what we keep hitting walls. But we're really focused on building out inclusion lists and things like that around by media groups where we're Black targeted or Black owned or any ethnicity. We're doing it for each of the kind of minority groups, and really focusing our time there. And we see success in retention and X, Y, and Z when we do find the right audiences and tap into these new groups. And one of the things what we noticed is 6 months ago, a year ago, we were doing is we were saying, well, we're targeting all 18 to 35-year-olds, so we're good. We're hitting and what we've realized is that by doing a massive Hulu buy, and hopefully Hulu's not on the phone, I'm not offending Hulu, but doing a Hulu buy across the target demographics, we're not getting into that audience group. And so we've seen the success by going in and starting to build out these private marketplace lists and so forth. I know a lot of the holding companies have started to do that. I know OMG was just on a panel recently, right? They came out with some work there. I know that Group M is doing the same, and so we're trying to do something similar in-house, the in-house agency that I oversee. So that's kind of our approach at the moment. But the problem we've had hands down has been scale. And that's what's been kind of holding us back.
Well, and talk about that as far as, I know you said it also would hurt other products that you were trying to, at the same time, it was limiting what you could do with the other products as you're building your strategy. Talk about that a little bit, and how did, if at all, did you deal with it, or were you able to?
Well, the whole scale piece, I don't think we've dealt with it yet. We're still working through it. And sorry, yeah, I'm kind of taking your question slightly different, but yeah, from the scale point of view, we're struggling a little bit. What we've really realized is we've been going out and talking to some of these minority-owned publications. They don't necessarily have the programmatic tool set built out, so they don't necessarily have the SSP infrastructure, the DSP, well, the SSP infrastructure to pass us through the formats, and they might not even be running the IAB standard formats. So we would need to do more integration and work with them, like in a more of a partnership point of view, and so for them to gain the scale and probably see the a lot of the advertising dollars that our teams here probably are running, they need to get on that programmatic system. So I've been trying to talk to them and say, look, can you guys get this implemented so we can increase our scale? So that's one area where we've been kind of challenging. And then the other one is just being able to identify them. So what I've also seen, and I don't want to be too negative, but I've seen a lot of DSPs starting to come out with lists and X, Y, and Z. I'm a little bit skeptical. I mean, I feel like we had a little bit of this with the world of fraud and viewability, right? Everybody suddenly had a viewable product when we were kind of challenging viewability 2-3 years ago. And I feel like it could be similar here. And I don't want to kind of compare, they're very different things, but I also feel that how do we make sure it's authentic and actually accurate, right? We're not just targeting. I got a list through recently of an inclusion list for minority, and it had CNN.com on it. Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of mass media to me. And so how do we make sure we're actually getting to the right audience as well? So that's kind of where we've been playing and working.
Kind of break into that, and as you said, the legitimacy of it all. And so,
yes.
And Andrew, with you, what more are you finding and discovering in terms of the challenges of it?
Yeah, and yeah, and we'll go back to scale, right? And so I think that's the major number one challenge. And also with that, right, as we work with these partners like OWN and these, I would say like these very large publishers, the cost of working with them is increasing, right? And then at the end of the day, that does increase our total marketing expenses. And then when we look at the total CAC, right, the total acquisition costs across the board, not just from a lower funnel perspective, right? Our marketing investment needs to continue to increase if we want to continue to work with them, with these partners, right? And then that's where, you know, we're looking for the scale there, right? And so I think from the other side, where we're trying to almost combat that, is really building out our first party audiences and really enriching our first party data sets, right? Whether we create sticky ways of engaging our consumers on site, or gaining additional information about our consumers so that we have more robust data sets that we can actually activate off of from a first party data standpoint, whether it be through email, SMS, or any of the first party mechanisms that we have to target them. And so I think it's just a balance there, right? And so it's continuously investing and testing in some of these larger publishers, but also at the same time, we've made investments and tried to test some of the smaller publishers to get to our more niche audiences, where we know that it's a very high likelihood that our audiences are. An example of that would be, you know, Black News Channel, right? It's squarely in the name. It's squarely within the publisher. They're a very small publisher, but they have the eyeballs that we're looking for. We just need to make sure, just from an audience perspective, it's a lot smaller audience than we need, but it's something that we can utilize to connect with our consumers and make sure that we are speaking to them directly. And we know from, we have a really good idea that that we are reaching our consumers through that publisher.
Well, and you had mentioned when we spoke before, also, just because someone's African-American doesn't mean that they're interested in African-American, you know, arts or African, like you can't label them a certain type of interest, and you can't just, again, it's not one big sweep of, okay, we're going to just, you know, go after this audience. And you really have to sort of narrow in terms of what each of them like, whether it be a certain type of music, or whether they're into gaming, or what they're, you know, like, you know, whatever their, you know, personality is bringing them. So how do you focus on those things? Is that more towards social, or is that more towards getting that first party data?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We're using kind of the marketing lingo here, but at the end of the day, right, we're all human, right? We're multifaceted, we're layered, we have so many different aspects to us that, like, when we talk about targeting, especially on Facebook and social, when the layer is, interests in African American art, right? It's or African art, right? It's disingenuous, right? Like, there can be many different types of people that are interested in that, and not just our Black consumers, right? And so we are looking for ways to triangulate that and making sure we're putting and statements in the Boolean logic, right, across all of these different layers. But once we do that, the costs tend to go up, and the audience starts to shrink. And so we are looking for ways to expand that out, whether it's through publisher deals, whether it's through lookalike targeting, whether it's through just different layering aspects of triangulating and combining different data segments together, right? And it's a big test and learn for us, and we're constantly testing and optimizing the way that we're trying to target and scale our audiences.
Right. And Freddie, for you, when you were talking about, like, when you're advertising for a laptop, it's just like it's hard to maybe say, okay, that could be for so many different audiences. And how do you really specifically go towards things, and getting into the programmatic? You touched on it a little bit. Now, obviously, that's one of the most efficient ways to target someone, but is programmatically, is it living up to, are you able to leverage programmatic and also target that diverse audience?
Yeah, and at the moment, no, like, we're not getting to the levels and scale that we want to see, and we're looking to go into kind of probably the forbidden word at this conference, but IOs and actually write go back to the old school way of working and doing sponsorships and so forth right now. So I'm hoping that we see programmatic pick up, because we want to be able to do the audience based reach and get the audience benefits minus cookie fun that could come, but all of that piece, like, that's what we want to see. I think one other thing when Andrew was just speaking, which I thought was interesting, like, we're doing all the same, like the thing about all the targeting and X, Y, and Z. The other part we're really focusing on is hiring. Right. So as we hire for the agency inside HP, is creating that diversity so that we're able to have more touch points with, right? If we're a bunch of marketers, like a bunch of white marketers, don't make sense to us. They might not understand certain cultures. So kind of creating a better diverse culture inside the agency has also been really critical on our list. So kind of like publishing, but also from the other side as well, which I do think is a critical thing for us all to be thinking about, and also for us as HP to go down this journey. We have to get that part sorted out as well.
Right. And I want to actually go add more to that with my last question. But before I do say that, I want to remind everyone, if you have a question for Freddie or Andrew, just either raise your hand and someone will unmute you, or you can also ask it in the chat box. But and just and winding down in this, I mean, obviously there's still a lot that needs to be worked out, but how are you moving forward? What's the best way? And why don't we start with you, Freddie, because you sort of touched on a little bit about, hiring within, and it has to start internally, but what else are you at HP doing that you're trying to make sure that this is not just some fad that's going to be gone in 12 months?
Right, yeah, not some kind of fad, and also something that comes across authentic, right? It's not just HP jumping on the next global trend, right? And so I think we've talked plenty, I think, about the programmatic, the publisher building out relationships, X, Y, and Z. We're looking to support, there's quite a few different industry body groups trying to come together to basically fund and help minority-owned publishers. And so we're kind of putting money and bets into some of those some of those groups. And then the last one is all purely on hiring. We're really looking to diversify the group that we work, and we do this. So I should put this in two different camps. We're looking to diversify the group we're hiring to the in-house agency at HP. We're looking to hold our agencies to a diversity number, so that they need to have X number of people from different minorities working on our business, so we get a nice plethora. And then we're even trying to hold our some of our publishers and through insertion orders or how we deal to also be working on that diversity initiative. So you put all that together, that's how we're kind of trying to drive, I guess, changing the industry, but then also changing the way we buy and focus our media. So that's kind of the approach.
Right. And what about for you, Andrew?
Yeah, and I think the hiring piece is a very interesting one as well. I think from where we sit at Walker & Company as well as Bevel and Form, you know, we have kind of a, I guess we sit in a sort of a privileged situation in that, you know, our organization as a whole is pretty diverse, right? It's already pretty diverse, right? And so what I mean by that is really we have so many different cultures and ethnicities within the organization that we work at, and so we see it and we experience it on a daily basis, right? We live and talk and we breathe the diversity that we see, right? And so that's really important to us. It's so important that even our agency partners, we put that in our SOW, the diversity inclusion. Those are things that we specifically look for, so that when we are speaking to our consumers, it's authentic, it's coming across authentically in the way that we buy and the way that we communicate to our consumers, right? And so, but more tactically speaking, right, I think from a testing standpoint, we are looking for data co-op partnerships. We're looking for the ways that we can enrich our data with our publishing partners. We're looking for I don't know how if you haven't heard of Walker & Company brands, we were acquired by P&G back in late 2018. So we're looking to extend our audience with our P&G partnership, whether it be through partnerships with other brands within the organization or leveraging some of the data that they have that we can then utilize and we can create lookalikes off of. So we're working through different ways to kind of attack this challenge that we have on our hands, but also really kind of enriching our own community and making sure that we are serving them authentically, and then making sure that we have products designed for them, and then at the same time organizationally making sure that we are authentic in the way that we communicate to each other, and making sure that we're holding ourselves to that standard as well.
Yep, just starting from the top and all the way down.
Awesome. Yes.
Makes sense. So, well, thanks, guys, and let's now let people. Do we have any questions for these guys?
If anybody has a question, go ahead and raise your hand. I don't see one posted in the chat, but I've got a quick question as we go here. Actually, two of them.
Omnipresent. This is.
You got. I'll join so you can see me.
Yeah.
I'm from MediaPost, and I'm just floating in.
Yes.
Two things. Andrew, you mentioned the word a bunch of times, authenticity, when you finished here and back when you were talking about jumping into social discussions. And Freddie, you were talking about authenticity as well. What's some real guidance on what do you really mean? What, you know, how do you approach with authenticity? What do you mean by authenticity?
Yeah, so I think for us, it's really asking the questions back to our consumers, right? It's like, what is the thing that is challenging for our consumers? What is a challenge? What is a thing that they care about? And making sure that those are things that we can communicate with them on, and making sure that our values are aligned with that. So obviously, as Walker & Company brands, we do have a set of values, and then we also look for in our consumers, what are the things that we can connect with that with our consumers on that align to our values, right? And so I think one of the big issues and kind of the programs that we're looking at right now is anti-recidivism, right? It's a big issue that is really close to the heart for Tristan Walker, the founder of Walker & Company brands. It's within the community itself. Our AA community, recidivism is something that we want to make sure that we support, right? And those are the active ways that we're communicating and connecting and making sure that we are putting our consumers first, and making sure not just from a data perspective, not just from a product perspective, but from organizationally, we're putting our consumers first and aligning to things and causes that our consumers do care about and really impact our communities.
Great.
Yeah, I don't have much to add, Jeff. What Andrew said, I think I'll give you one quick example, which I think is a really good one. I think last month, June. Yeah, still July, was Pride Month, right? And I saw a lot of backlash, and we were right when people put the Pride logo up on social and put it up in some markets, not others, depending on how and then also pulled it down at the end of June. So is it just a marketing ploy that you do for June, right? It's only one month. And so I think that's a really good example of what we're kind of worried about. I guess we're talking about at HP, like just making sure we stay authentic. Are we just trying to capture the buzz of June, or are we trying to actually put a statement out there of where HP is going as a business.
Great example of obviously doing something longer term rather than just jump in and jump out of a culture. And then one more quick question, Freddie, this is for you. How about in the B2B market space? I don't know if you get too involved in that, but can you touch diversity and inclusivity in both reaching the B2B marketplace and the publishers?
I've not succeeded yet. It's probably the quickest answer. We would like to. We'd like to do more in the B2B space. But right now we have not really kind of tackled or worked out a way to do anything really, honestly, in the B2B space.
Okay, great.
So we're focused on, if we can get the consumer to scale, we'll get there first, and then we'll come around to kind of B2B, which yeah, hopefully we can get that one sorted too.
Well, and I like, Freddie, how when we spoke up before, you had said it's just all like just taking these steps, and with other people I've spoken with, it's just everyone's on their own particular journey, and just to continue to move forward, and that's what's going to make it real and authentic and lasting. So, and I know that you were saying that that's what you guys are doing at HP. So, so I think that's it. That's great.
That's it for questions.
Freddie, Andrew, thank you so much. You were awesome. I